So here's the thing. Being alone isn't the same as being lonely. Learning solitude and becoming comfortable with our own company gives us the space to reconnect with ourselves. Take a seat. This is the Life Bench. Thank you to everyone who's listening again for this episode. It's been a strange few weeks around Ads' birthday, as it always is. I said it last week, but that time around birthdays and anniversaries just hits a little harder, and it's not easy to process things. I went to visit his plot, which I do every year on birthday and anniversary, to just sit for a while and reflect on things, remember chats and memories. I just let my mind wander to whatever it wants to. And although it's hard, in a way it's nice to spend that bit of time there, alone, out in nature, to try and process things. This time I was a lot more emotional, and I've found the weeks either side have been much harder. And I think that's because I'm finally facing some of my grief, rather than shutting it out, I guess. It's taken its toll on me, so I'm trying to give myself a bit more time to rest and recover. It's important that we all do this, especially at times when we really need it. So last week I spoke about why we need boredom, and how slowing down and creating some space in our lives allows us to reflect, process things, be creative, and also to rest. And this week's episode in a way follows on from the last two, and I want to talk about solitude. In loneliness and isolation, I focused on the feelings of disconnection and the absence of meaningful connections. In Why We Need Boredom, I talked about the need for embracing that boredom and its benefits. With this episode, The Importance of Solitude, I want to talk about being comfortable with being alone and taking opportunities to find yourself again. Learning to enjoy our own company rather than avoiding it. I often talk about connection and trying to help rebuild meaningful connections with others. But sometimes the connection we need most is the one with ourselves, which can often get lost for various reasons. And so that's what this episode is about. Finding comfort, peace, and even strength in the time spent alone. Before my uncle died in 2012, and I experienced grief for the first time, I was always comfortable with my own company. I genuinely enjoyed time alone and never really got bored. I was always able to fill my time doing something, not as a distraction, but because I had the opportunity to do those things. And even if I didn't fancy doing anything at all, I was quite happy to sit in silence or listen to music and just let myself be, I guess. I don't really know why this was. Whether it was the era I grew up in, my home life, or maybe just a personality trait. And then when I lost my uncle, I thought this was still the case, that I enjoyed my own company and didn't need to see others. As I've spoken about before, I realise now, years later, that this wasn't the truth. That wasn't solitude. That was isolation. Hiding myself away from the world, and really hiding away from facing things. I wasn't spending time alone through choice, but I just didn't know it at the time. And I think it's important to make that distinction. Solitude is something you choose. Isolation isn't. It's something that happens usually because of other factors, like pain, grief, depression, or fear. Again, as a result of doing this podcast, I've looked back at that time a lot and learnt so much. The time I spent alone wasn't doing the things I enjoyed. It was filled with distractions and things I didn't really have to think about. Scrolling on my phone, binging TV series on Netflix, or getting sucked into videos on YouTube. Anything to stop me having to sit with my thoughts and face reality. And the more I avoided that, the harder it got to find peace, culminating in me being at my lowest point this year and thinking things I never thought that I would. It's strange how I didn't notice it at the time, but that I can see it so clearly now. I'd always be distracting myself with something, and that impacted my relationship with Amber. I wanted to be alone. I thought it was because I was enjoying that time, but now I realise the real reasons why. So more recently I've had to relearn solitude, to find how to be comfortable with my own company again. And just like I said in the boredom episode, I've experienced some of my clearest thinking, come up with some of my best ideas, and learned so much about myself, the world, and life in general. I started to notice what was important to me, the little things in life, what I wanted to do, and things I actually enjoyed. And I actually started to spend more time with Amber, because that's what I wanted, and I wasn't shutting things out or hiding away. Now when I'm alone, it's not very often I feel lonely. I still have moments, like when I think of ads, but where I'm reconnecting with my other friends, and myself, I suppose, I don't often feel alone now. And that's what solitude is. It's the space and time where we can be ourselves and do the things we enjoy. It gives us the chance to hear ourselves again, our thoughts, our feelings, the things we push aside too much in everyday life. And like with boredom, I think it's something that many of us have lost touch with. The way life is these days, we're so used to filling every gap with something that the idea of doing nothing and being alone feels incredibly uncomfortable. But it's in those moments where we can really find ourselves and learn so much about who we are and what we want to do with our lives. Boredom and solitude are certainly similar in many aspects and have a lot of the same benefits. But boredom is something we need in our modern world to give us the chance for rest and peace. Solitude, though, is the choice to be alone at times, to think clearly, to create, to breathe. When we choose solitude, or time alone, we're making time to reconnect with our true selves, the version of us that isn't shaped by all the external influences, opinions, comparisons, social media. It's the quiet space that allows you to step away from all that and switch off from it, and then really listen to what's going on inside. Solitude gives us perspective. It gives us the opportunity to see things clearer, to notice things, to understand what we're feeling, and make sense of life as it's happening, not months or years later. Because it's so easy to get caught up in the constant motion of life these days. If we don't intentionally take the time for solitude, or let ourselves simply be bored, life can become a bit of a blur. And at some point, we'll look back and wonder how all that time passed, and think that we didn't really experience it properly. I also think that solitude strengthens our emotional independence. When we learn to be comfortable on our own, we stop relying on others for validation, or even distraction from your discomfort. It gives us the ability to find contentment with yourself, and that's an amazing place to get to. It can be incredibly freeing to know who you truly are, how you really feel, and what you want to do with your life. And in a world filled with all this outside noise these days, being able to be yourself, truly yourself, is one of the most valuable traits to have. I just want to reiterate the point that there's a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is something that happens to us. Solitude is something we choose. Loneliness feels empty and disconnected, but solitude is about reconnecting and feeling full of thought, reflection, creativity, and growth. Full of life, I guess. It's another one of those things that isn't always easy. Like boredom, solitude opens up the space for things to come to the surface, things we usually avoid, the emotions and feelings we've been burying. But that's part of the process. We have to face all of these things to find out who we really are. If we can learn to sit with those feelings instead of burying or hiding away from them, we open ourselves up to the real possibility of self-discovery. For me, solitude isn't about escaping from reality anymore. It's about dedicated time for myself, for who I want to be and what I want to do. Now, you won't find solitude unless you make room for it in your life. It has to be an intention, because modern life won't just give it to you. It will fill every spare second you have if you let it. So you have to build it into your day, like you would any other priority, because it is one. I think the first step in finding solitude is the realization that being alone doesn't have to mean being disconnected, knowing the difference between being lonely and being alone as solitude. You can be surrounded by people and still feel lonely, but you can also be completely alone and feel full, grounded, and content. It doesn't have to be something huge either. Solitude doesn't mean you need to disappear into the woods and hide away, although there is a millennial urge in me to do that sometimes. Simply a few minutes in the morning without your phone, a walk with no distractions, or a quiet moment in the evening. What matters is creating that time that's just for you. And the more you do these things, the more you'll realize how powerful they are, and you'll start to make more room for them. The small, little moments will become longer, and you'll get more out of them. Solitude gives us the opportunity to get away from the noise, clear our minds so that we can process things and make better decisions. It allows us to start to connect with who we are when there's no one else around. And in that space, you'll discover what actually matters to you, what gives you energy, what drains you. Ultimately, what you want more of in your life. And maybe that's the point. Solitude isn't about hiding away from the world. It's about taking the time for yourself, so that when you do step back into it, you're more grounded, more present, more connected with yourself, and more aware of reality. So yeah, that's been the importance of solitude. Like boredom, I think it's something we all need more of. Not in a lonely way, but in a healthy and grounding way. Because when you strip away all of the outside noise, opinions and influences, what's left is you, and only you. And that's where so much clarity, understanding, creativity, and peace come from. I've learnt that solitude isn't about shutting the world out and hiding yourself away. It's about you. It's where you can stop trying so hard to compete or compare and just be. You can stop trying to keep up and learn more about who you are and what matters to you in life. And in this world that constantly demands your attention, knowing who you are and choosing to spend time alone is one of the most powerful things you can do. So if there's one thing I hope you take away from this episode, don't be afraid to be alone. Make room for it in your life and use that time to listen, to think, to process and reflect, to reconnect with the person that you might have lost in all the noise of today. Thank you again for listening. I really appreciate you being here and continuing to support what I'm doing. It means a lot. If you have any feedback or something you'd like to see from the podcast, then by all means reach out and let me know. And if you've been enjoying it so far, please share it with others or leave a review. It all helps to spread my idea and vision for what I want it to be. So you doing these things will really help. Just a little reminder that I'm taking part in Grow a Mo for Movember this year. And by the time this episode is released, I'll be a few days in and already have some growth on my tash. Movember raises awareness around different elements of men's health, both physical and mental, a lot of which are close to my heart and tie into a lot of what I have spoken about or plan to speak about in the future. So if you can donate anything at all, it goes to a great cause. There'll be a link in the description for this episode, as well as one on my Instagram page. And just before I finish up with the quote, in the same way as last week's episode around boredom, maybe when it ends, take the opportunity to let the music fade out and just sit with your thoughts for a while. Let yourself be still and see what happens. So I've chosen a quote this week by the English writer Virginia Woolf, and her line suggests that solitude is essential for introspection and self-reflection, allowing one to connect more deeply with their own inner self and surroundings. And it just reinforces why we all need a bit more solitude in our lives. In solitude, we give passionate attention to our lives, to our memories, to the details around us.